The world has never fully processed the loss of Kobe Bryant. Nearly 3 years after the helicopter crash that killed the basketball legend, his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and 7 others, the grief remains raw. Not just for his family, but for millions of fans who viewed him as a symbol of relentless excellence. In the immediate aftermath, attention rightly focused on the public memorials, the legal battles over crash site photos, and the renegotiation of his business empire. But in the quiet months that followed, as Vanessa Bryant began the painful process of sorting through the tangible remains of a shared life, something unexpected emerged from the walls of their family estate. It was not a scandal in the tabloid sense. There were no secret love letters to other women, no hidden criminal evidence. Instead, what workers and estate managers reportedly uncovered was far more unsettling: a carefully organized, deeply personal archive that revealed Kobe Bryant was not just a planner in business and basketball, but a man who seemed to have anticipated his own early death. And the contents of that archive have forced a difficult, uncomfortable question. Did Vanessa Bryant inherit a legacy of love, or a blueprint for a tragedy she was never meant to see? To understand why this discovery is genuinely troubling, one must first appreciate the sheer scale of Kobe Bryant's post-retirement mind. While most athletes fade into golf courses or broadcasting booths, Kobe dove headfirst into what he called the second act. He won an Oscar for Dear Basketball. He built Granity Studios, a multimedia company aimed at teaching life lessons through sport-themed storytelling. He invested early in Body Armor, turning a $6 million stake into over $200 million after Coca-Cola's acquisition. He co-founded Bryant Stibble, a venture capital firm with hundreds of millions in assets. To the public, this was the Mamba mentality applied to capitalism. But to those closest to him, Kobe's frantic pace after retirement felt different. He often spoke of a sense of urgency that went beyond normal ambition. Friends have recounted how Kobe would obsessively create detailed binders for every project, not just business plans, but personal philosophies, legacy maps, and even instructions for how his daughters should be raised if he were ever taken out of the equation. At the time, friends laughed it off as Kobe being his typical intense self. After January 26, 2020, those binders no longer seemed like overkill. They seemed like a man leaving breadcrumbs. The discovery inside the Newport Coast estate, which Vanessa sold in 2022 for roughly $4.3 million less than its original asking price, a financial decision that itself raised eyebrows, was initially framed as sentimental. Reports from insiders involved in the estate sale and subsequent deep cleaning described a hidden compartment behind a built-in bookshelf in Kobe's private office. This was not a safe or a lockbox, which would be normal for valuable items. It was a false back panel, covered by a row of Kobe's own championship rings replicas and MVP trophies. Behind it, workers found a series of weatherproof document cases. Inside those cases were not just letters, but a structured filing system. There were folders labeled for each daughter, each containing handwritten letters for future birthdays, weddings, and graduations. There were legal notes on trust structures that went far beyond standard wills. There were even tape-recorded voice messages on old USB drives, with Kobe's voice offering advice on everything from negotiating contracts to handling public betrayal. At first glance, this appears to be the ultimate act of a loving, paranoid father. But the deeper problem, the bad part of the discovery, lies in the nature of what was not found and what one specific letter allegedly contained. According to sources who have spoken under condition of anonymity and whose accounts align with subsequent legal filings in the Bryant estate probate cases, the most disturbing item was a letter addressed directly to Vanessa, dated just 3 weeks before the fatal helicopter flight. In this letter, Kobe did not just express love. He wrote about a feeling of closing circles. He mentioned that he had accomplished most of what he set out to do, but that he felt a strange peace about not being around to see the rest. He allegedly wrote that if something happened to him, Vanessa should not waste time in grief, but should immediately execute a series of business moves he had outlined in a separate emergency binder. What makes this bad is not the sentiment. Many people write morbid letters. What makes it troubling is the specificity. The emergency binder, which was also found in the compartment, contains step-by-step instructions for renegotiating with Nike, for handling his stake in body armor, and even for which lawyers to fire first. It was a succession plan so detailed that it looked less like a hopeful precaution and more like a final checklist. This raises an impossible question. Did Kobe Bryant have a premonition, or did he have knowledge? There is no evidence of foul play, and this script does not suggest any. The helicopter crash was ruled an accident caused by pilot error and fog. But the existence of these documents changes the emotional calculus of everything Vanessa did afterward. In the months following the crash, Vanessa Bryant acted with a speed and clarity that surprised even seasoned business executives. Within weeks, she had filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the helicopter company and the pilot's estate. She swiftly renegotiated a new deal with Nike to continue Kobe's signature shoe line, a deal that had been on the verge of collapse before his death. She took control of Kobe's $100 million venture capital fund. She even filed a federal lawsuit against Los Angeles County over deputies sharing photos of the crash site. Publicly, she was lauded as a warrior widow. Privately, however, some of Kobe's former business associates expressed quiet unease. They noted that Vanessa had never been involved in Kobe's day-to-day business affairs before his death. She was a supportive spouse, but not a deal-maker. And yet, she moved like someone who had been handed a playbook. The discovery of the hidden estate documents suggests she had been handed a playbook, literally. The problem is that the playbook's existence implies Kobe was preparing for an imminent end, and that raises uncomfortable questions about his mental state in his final weeks. The bad aspect of the estate find is not about Vanessa doing anything wrong. She has conducted herself with dignity under unimaginable pressure. The trouble is what the documents reveal about Kobe's private world. Friends have since come forward to say that in late 2019, Kobe had become more introspective, more religious, and more fixated on legacy. He had started attending daily mass at a local Catholic church, something he had not done since his childhood. In Italy, he had begun reconnecting with estranged family members, including his parents, with whom he had a famously rocky relationship. These are behaviors often associated with someone who suspects their time is short. But why would a 41-year-old, seemingly healthy, newly minted Oscar winner feel that way? The letters offer no clear answer, only hints. One note, scrawled in the margins of a business plan, read, "The helicopter is the only place I can think, but it's also the place I pray the hardest." Another, tucked inside a book on Stoic philosophy, simply said, "Control is an illusion. Preparation is not." When the news of this hidden compartment inevitably leaked, the public reaction was split. Many fans saw it as heartbreaking but beautiful, a final gift from a father who loved too much. Others, however, felt a creeping sense of unease. Why hide these letters in a false wall rather than a safety deposit box? Why write a letter 3 weeks before a crash that reads like a goodbye? There is no conspiracy here. Only the uncomfortable reality that Kobe Bryant, for all his public bravado, was privately wrestling with a profound fear of sudden loss. And that fear, captured in ink and paper, became a self-fulfilling prophecy only in retrospect. The tragedy is not that he predicted the crash. The tragedy is that he spent his final weeks living as if it were inevitable. The legal and financial ramifications of the discovery have been quietly significant. In probate court, Vanessa has used the documents to fend off challenges to the estate's distribution. Kobe's parents, Joe and Pam Bryant, initially sought a share of the estate under California law, but the existence of Kobe's detailed handwritten instructions, specifically excluding them from direct inheritance, bolstered Vanessa's position. Similarly, a lawsuit from Vanessa's own mother, Sophia Lane, who claimed Kobe had promised to support her for life, was undermined when the hidden letters showed no such promise. In each case, the estate's lawyers have selectively cited the documents as irrefutable evidence of Kobe's true wishes. This is, on its face, good for Vanessa and her daughters. But It also means that the most intimate thoughts of a dead man are being used as legal weapons. That is the darker shade of bad, the commodification of a husband's private fears. Beyond the legal battles, the cultural impact of the estate, discovery has been slow to unfold. Vanessa has not publicly released the letters, and she likely never will. But excerpts have been described in court filings and in biographies published since the crash. One recurring theme is Kobe's obsession with his daughter's futures. In a letter to his eldest, Natalia, he wrote, "You are the guardian of your sister's memories of me. Do not let the world turn me into a logo. Tell them I was silly. Tell them I burned toast. Tell them I was afraid." That vulnerability is beautiful, but it also places an enormous burden on a young woman. The documents effectively turn Kobe's children into the executors of his psychological estate, not just his financial one. That is a weight no child should have to carry. Another troubling element is what the documents did not address. There is no mention in any of the recovered letters of the specific helicopter, a Sikorsky S-76B that had a questionable maintenance record and lacked a terrain awareness and warning system. Kobe had flown in helicopters for years to avoid Los Angeles traffic, and he famously trusted pilot Era Zobayan. But the letters contain no instructions about changing his travel habits, no express fear of flying. This omission is strange, given how detailed everything else is. If Kobe truly felt something was coming, why did he not simply stop taking helicopters? The answer, suggested by one therapist who spoke generally about high-achieving personalities, is that obsessive planning is often a coping mechanism for anxiety, not a solution to it. Kobe may have written those letters not because he believed he would die, but because writing them allowed him to continue flying. The ritual of preparation reduced the fear. In a grim irony, the very act of preparing for death may have enabled the conditions that led to it. The sale of the Newport Coast estate itself added another layer of strangeness. Vanessa sold the property in 2022 for $4.3 million, less than its original 2021 asking price, absorbing a significant loss on a home she had once shared with Kobe and Gianna. Real estate experts noted that the hidden compartment and the subsequent media attention likely lowered the property's value, not because the items were scandalous, but because the home became a site of morbid curiosity. No one wants to live in a house where a dead man's secret farewell letters were found behind a fake bookshelf. Vanessa's decision to sell at a loss was thus both practical and symbolic. She was not just selling a house, but a narrative she never asked for. So, where does this leave us? The discovery in Vanessa Bryant's estate is bad in the most human sense of the word. It is bad because it confirms that Kobe Bryant lived his final weeks in a state of private dread, unable to shake the feeling that his clock was running out. It is bad because it places an impossible legacy on his wife and children, forcing them to navigate grief while executing a dead man's contingency plans. And it is bad because it denies us the comfort of believing that tragedy is always random. Sometimes it seems tragedy is anticipated, even welcomed by the person it claims. Vanessa Bryant has not spoken publicly about the letters, and she likely never will. Her silence is itself a form of protection of her children, of Kobe's memory, and of her own sanity. But the documents exist. They are filed in sealed exhibits in Los Angeles probate court, waiting for future historians or memoirists to unseal them. When that day comes, the world will see not just the Mamba mentality, but the Mamba mortality. A man who prepared for everything except the possibility that preparation might not save him. That is the real tragedy. Not a scandal, not a crime, just a loving, brilliant, deeply anxious man who wrote his own eulogy and then boarded a helicopter into the fog.